How far did the Bolsheviks revolutionize everyday life in Russia and the USSR between 1905 and the 1930s? Although the Bolsheviks had been a standalone political party since 1905, they were small in number and had little influence on everyday life. Once in power after October 1917, they wanted people to think, act, and speak Bolshevik. Because they operated from the top down, success in creating the new Soviet person varied according to which group of people the Bolsheviks impacted and what methods were used. Peasants, ethnic minorities, industrial workers, women, and artists and intelligentsia were all affected. In 1917, peasants were by far the largest group in the USSR. The Bolsheviks radically changed peasant life between 1928 and 1939. Bolsheviks wanted to transform peasants into proletarians in order to speed up industrialization, which, as Marxists, they deemed a necessary step on the path toward a socialist and eventually communist society. Exporting peasant-grown grain was the Bolsheviks' main source of income for industrialization. In 1928, the Bolsheviks began collectivization of agriculture, ending peasant ownership of land. Collectivization and the accompanying mechanization transformed peasants into industrial agricultural workers. The Orthodox Church, a pillar of peasant life, was suppressed and clergy eradicated. Bolsheviks labeled rich peasants as kulaks, which in Bolshevik speak meant class enemies. These people were sent to forced labor camps, the gulags, or otherwise punished. Many poor peasants and Kazakh pastoralists were randomly kulaktivized to fulfill party quotas for villages and regions. The transition from peasant to proletarian did not go smoothly. Peasants resisted with violence and women's protest actions. Collectivization caused famines in Ukraine and Kazakhstan between 1928 and 1933. Kazakh pastoralist society was destroyed. Despite minor concessions such as the retention of a single cow per family, permission for a household garden, and allowance of local trading markets, by 1936 resistance to collectivization was suppressed. In the 1920s, Bolsheviks encouraged multiculturalism, korenizatsia, throughout the USSR as a way of bringing ethnic minorities into the fold of revolutionary consciousness. They co-opted earlier nationalist movements that had emerged in the non-Russian areas of the Tsarist Empire. All ethnic minorities were radically changed by Soviet policies on culture, work, and education. The Bolsheviks initiated what we would now call affirmative action policies, including requiring administrative and cultural agency, bureau, and committee positions in the ethnic republics to be filled by a majority of non-Russian persons. Promoting public primary, secondary, and post-secondary education in regional ethnic languages. Encouraging dual identities. One could be a Georgian Soviet citizen, a Ukrainian Soviet citizen, a Kazakh Soviet citizen, even a Jewish Yiddish Soviet citizen. Promoting worldwide revolutionary consciousness for colonized and oppressed peoples. The African-American poet Langston Hughes toured Soviet Kazakhstan and extolled Soviet equality and opportunity. This hearts and minds approach, while successful, was reversed in 1937. Leading multiculturalists were purged from power and oftentimes executed or sent to the gulags. Here we see a picture of Kazakh nationalist Ahmed Baltursunov, who was executed during the Stalinist purges of 1937. The Bolsheviks, again in a top-down fashion, moved women toward a proletarian psychology. However, success was varied. They were inconsistent in their approaches and did not resolve the three conflicting roles of family work, employment, and party involvement with which women struggled. The Family Code of 1918 gave women voting rights, legalized abortion, and made divorce easier to obtain than previously. The Gentnotel Women's Bureau was established the same year. However, male chauvinism in the workplace and in the Komsomol, the party youth organization, and traditional family relationships blocked women's progress toward revolutionary consciousness. Muslim women in Uzbekistan and other Muslim areas were used as pawns in the Bolsheviks' attack against traditional male domination. Here we see a moment in the Hujum campaign in Uzbekistan. The Hujum was a symbolic protest against Muslim male domination. Soviet officials encouraged women to publicly burn their veil garment, the panji. In 1930, Stalin eliminated the women's rights section of the 1918 Family Code and the Zhenotdel. The traditional role of motherhood was promoted in propaganda from then on. The Bolsheviks' drive to industrialize the USSR resulted in a shift in lifestyle from peasant villager to urban industrial worker for millions of people. Bolsheviks increased the number of peasants, mostly men, moving to urban areas and created new industrial centers populated with these former peasants. For the new workers, life became regulated by the clock instead of the rhythm of the seasons. Foodways were drastically changed from eating at the family table to eating with hundreds of fellow workers in factory mess halls and canteens. The Bolsheviks promoted personal hygiene and public health measures to aid in industrialization. For millions of former peasants, it was the first time they had ever been seen by doctors and other health professionals. Artists, writers, filmmakers, designers, and musicians initially flourished after 1917, but in the 1930s, Stalin clamped down on experimentalism and modernism. Socialist realism was mandated in all art forms. Notice the difference between the Kandinsky painting of the 20s and the Stalin allegory of the 30s. The composer Dmitri Shostakovich was threatened by Stalin to literally change his tune from atonality and modernism to Stalinist realism. The Bolshevik drive to create the new Soviet person in a communist utopia was never fully realized for any segment of society. However, revolutionary changes in everyday life did occur for all citizens of the USSR. The Bolsheviks made these changes through policies of industrialization, urbanization, collectivization of agriculture, nationalism, indigenization, public health, and civil rights for women. Bolsheviks created a top-down bureaucracy to implement these policies. On-the-ground methods ranged from affirmative action in jobs and education to promotion of ethnic cultures to art as propaganda. When these methods failed to produce satisfactory results, the Bolsheviks consistently fell back on violence and terror.